Now it is time for me to tell you all a little bit about what's on my little mind today. All right, it says, I told you this before, but I'll tell you again. It starts with, and Sarah lived 100 years, and 20 years, and 7 years. The years of Sarah's life. So, and Sarah lived once, there's the word life, and then it goes 100 years, 20 years, 7 years. The years of Sarah's life. It says life again, twice. Why? Why is it so verbose? You know the Torah is never verbose. In fact, sometimes we have to figure out what something means because there's not enough words. Here, there's too many words. Well, even as children, when we read this opening verse, we have to ask ourselves, why is the word Chaye, or the life of Sarah, said twice? Perhaps it is because the Hebrew word Chayim, life, has two meanings. Now, we could go through and say, why does it say 120 and 7 years? But we're not going to do that today. We've done that before many times. But I never went through this. Why does it say the word life twice? All right, the first has to do with the soul. A person is alive as long as the soul is in the body. When the soul leaves, the person doesn't die, but the body dies. Soul continues to live on. So that's one life. Life has another meaning as well. And this is the one that's the most important. Life means, in this case, happiness. Not the fleeting happiness of achieving or fulfillment of our desires. No, not that kind of happiness like, oh, look at that, I need that. And you buy it, you take it home, you never look at it again. No, it's not one of those. This is the deep happiness that flows as a result of our dominant emunah, our faith. It also comes from our bitachon, which is trust in God. So we have faith and trust in God. Okay? By the way, when we talk about faith, we're not talking about, I have faith that God exists. No, we don't have faith that God, we know God exists. We have faith that God will do things for us. That's the faith we have. God is going to do things, the right things, whether we agree with it, whether we like it. God's going to do things for the right reasons. That's the faith we have. And we trust God, bitachon. We have trust in God, that God always does what's right, even if we don't understand it or like it or agree with it. No, that's doesn't matter. We're not God. We don't understand God's ways. So why is the word chaye repeated twice? Why? To make sure that we would understand, while Sarah lived 127 years, all those years were years of happiness based on her unshakable emunah, belief, and bitachon, trust. Emunah is really faith and trust. So this was quite a feat considering the hardship she endured. You know, she didn't have the greatest life. She was childless until the age of 90. She always wanted a child very badly. She was childless until 90. That couldn't have made her happy. But throughout her life, Sarah and Abraham were continuously tested with very uncomfortable situations at best and life-threatening situations at worst. But she lived a totally spiritual life of true happiness, always holding on to her belief and trust in God. In this case, happiness really is kind of like fulfillment. She was fulfilled. So, I got to ask you a question. What makes us truly happy? Is it chocolate? Is it gribbiness? Well, maybe for me it is, but I don't know about anybody else. Not chocolate, gribbiness. Gefilte fish, whatever. Do we feel good while we're eating it? A Hershey bar with almonds, or a Score bar, or a whatever. Does that not give us true happiness? No, of course not. For a minute, maybe. Gambling in a casino, the thrill also passes. And for some, it even turns to sadness and anger because it didn't turn out the way we really wanted it to. What about when we get a big hug from a child? What could be better than that? But even that goes away. The answer is trusting God. We need to believe with all our being that God is always taking care of us in godly ways. We don't understand it, but we know it. In that state of mind, we will have a solid inner happiness, a solid fulfillment that cannot be shaken by anything or anyone and will never be worn off. Sarah had 27 years of happiness, of fulfillment. That's what we're learning here. Another interesting use of the words in our Torah reading today came about when it says, and God blessed Avraham bakol, which means with everything. So it says, and God blessed Avraham with everything. Well, if you knew Abraham's life, I don't think he thought, or that anybody reading it believes that, but Abraham did. God and Abraham had a relationship that was no one else had. And Abraham was always blessed with everything. That's what Abraham believed. So what makes this interesting comes later in the Torah reading. And it will happen when we read about Yitzchak and Yaakov. Not today. It will be when we find the word kol, which means everything, being used by them. They use the word. The difference is that this time the word is used about Abraham. So they knew that Abraham had everything, was blessed with everything. And the other times the word will be used by Yitzchak and Yaakov is to thank God. Yitzchak said, or will say, and I ate mikol, I ate from everything. And Yaakov will say, and I have kol, I have everything. What is important is that the use of the word kol for each patriarch describes the lives of each of them. Each of them had everything, and they believed that they had everything. And you know their lives, every single one of their lives. I mean, I don't know how many of us would want to trade lives with them. Abraham's life was one of constant success and blessing, both in spiritual elevation and in wealth. To be sure, Abraham was viewed as the Prince of God among the nations. That's how they viewed him, the Prince of God. Bakol, everything, and every one of his endeavors was blessed. Now, let's switch to Kohelet. You know what Kohelet is? That's the book nobody understands. It's Ecclesiastes, chapter 8, verse 5. It says, one who observes a mitzvah will know no evil. One who observes a mitzvah, one mitzvah, will know no evil. Yitzchak viewed everything he did in his life as being a mitzvah. Everything. Yitzchak. Therefore, he experienced no evil in his own mind. Even hardships were viewed by him as an opportunity for growth. He ate mikol. He ate from everything. He gained from every life experience. And Yaakov's life was one of giving. He endured constant exile and hardship, Yaakov, yet he never aspired to take anything for himself. His only concern was for others. He had kol, everything. He believed he had everything. He doesn't need more for himself, but he needs to help others. He never felt a lack of anything because he never expected anything other than the love of God. These are our ancestors. This is who began Judaism. To be sure, all three of our ancestors and their families, their wives, their children, they led very different lives. They did. Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov lived totally different lives. And their wives lived totally different lives. And their children lived totally different lives as well. Yet inwardly, they were all happily satisfied with the life that God gave them. They loved God, and they loved what God was doing for them. So in that context, we all have lived rich and full lives, every one of us, regardless of how we think sometimes we're being punished or this isn't the way we want it. You know, if a loved one is sick, then that's not a punishment for us. We didn't necessarily do anything wrong to have somebody else be sick. Why is that a punishment? It's not a reward either, but it's certainly not a punishment. It's stuff happens. And everything happens for a reason, but we don't understand it. And that's fine. But we still want to know what will become of our lives, no matter what happens. We want to know what's going to happen next. What's next? What's next? It seems that at any time we can become richer or poorer. We can become stronger or weaker. Or we can become more sociable or more withdrawn. Not just with people, but with our loved ones, or we could be with them, or we could be alone. The reality is nobody knows. Nobody knows. I certainly don't know what's going to happen in 5 minutes. If there is one thing we can all agree on is that God decides these things and we don't understand it. And that's fine. We need to accept that. The trick is that we must learn to accept God's decisions as being the right thing for us, even when we do not like them. It's like, I use this story a lot. If you were a child or one of your children decided they're going to set up a basketball game or a baseball game or a soccer game on the New Jersey Turnpike during rush hour, they don't necessarily know, they're too young to know, that that's not a good idea. But you do, and you don't let them. And they get so mad at you. You don't know, you don't love me, you don't understand, you're too old, you're this, you're that. No. You know it's not a good idea to play baseball or football or soccer on the New Jersey Turnpike during rush hour. It's a bad idea. Nothing good could come of that. God knows too, but we don't. We're God's children. We don't know what God knows. So sometimes when things happen, we get angry. When Avot HaKadoshim, our holy ancestors, both the husbands and their wives, taught us how to live life, they taught us the importance of being happy with kol, with everything that God gives us and does for us. That's true. One final thing before we say goodbye on this. It says in Bereshit chapter 24, verse 2, in Genesis chapter 24, verse 2, it says, he ruled over all that was his. Who is this person that we're reading about? It's talking about not God, not Abraham, but Eliezer. Abraham's senior servant, the servant who Abraham trusted with running his entire household, everything. He entrusted Eliezer so much with everything that Abraham sent Eliezer to find a wife for Yitzchak. He trusted him that much. Abraham knew that no one would be successful if they had tried to bribe Eliezer into accepting an unsuitable woman as Yitzchak's wife, because he knew Eliezer had everything he needs and everything he wants. So Abraham was not concerned, even in the least, to pick Eliezer, to pick a wife for his son. Eliezer was 1,000% trustworthy. I know you can't be more than 100%, but you know what I mean. He just totally trusted him. Abraham trusted Eliezer. And Abraham knew this because of how Eliezer took care of his own possessions. Sometimes a person's belongings can rule over them. Their possessions require so much time and care that the person is not free to pursue important things. Worse than that, one can get caught up in constantly acquiring things that they just must have. I mentioned that earlier. And when they have it, you get insatiable. You want more. You always want more. And it overtakes you. There's no end to this. And those people will have time for nothing else. And there's a story that Jackie Mason goes through, and he talks about if you live in California there by Hollywood, everybody has a Mercedes. Everybody has a Mercedes. Why? You ask them, and they say, oh, it's the engineering. I need it because it's the best engineering. And that's what they say. So you go, but they don't even know how to turn the radio on in the car. But they're the engineering. That's what they love. And if you have a Cadillac, it's no good. Oh, yeah, Cadillac. Oh, yeah. It's my other car. This is my other car. It's my sister-in-law. She left the car here. I didn't mean for it. Oh, yeah, you know how he does it. But you're never satisfied with what you have. If they had something better, they would buy that, or they would try. And for those who can't afford the Mercedes or the Cadillac, or especially the Mercedes, if they can't afford the Mercedes, what is the excuse? You think I would buy a German car? He was a very funny man. He should rest in peace, Oliver Shalom. But nobody's ever satisfied. So Eliezer ruled over his property, but did not rule over him. He always had everything in perspective, all the time. He was happy with his lot in life. He was very happy. He had no desire for what was not his. He was not a jealous person. And therefore, Abraham knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that Eliezer was not subject to bribery. Possessions can help us or hurt us. It depends upon how we use them. We should only ask for what we need. More is not always better. And in the ethics of our ancestors, in Pirkei Avot, it teaches us about Bereshit, chapter 2, verse 8, that it means more property means more worries. The more you have, the more you have to worry. After a while, you got to put a safe in your house, and you got to put it in the bank safe, and you got to do this. You got to have all these things to put your stuff because you're worried about it. We covered a lot of seemingly disjointed ground today in this Devar Torah. I admit that. I try not to do that, but I got to let you in on a little secret. They're not disjointed at all. I'm going to explain quickly why. The message from today's Torah reading is actually pretty simple and pretty clear. It teaches us that life is not just living, but trusting and putting faith in God. It is called everything or complete when we do that. Our lives are called. Our lives are complete when we do that. When it comes to the rest, we should only use what we need and only use it when we need it. We do not have to be as good as Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah to be loved and to love our God. We don't have to be that good. Even if we live as Avram's trusted servant Eliezer, we will be loved. How do we know that? And how do we do that? How do we achieve this level of fulfillment? We must learn to rule our things. and not let our things rule us. L'chaim, to life. That's the point. And that's why it says her life twice. L'chaim, to life. Shabbat Shalom and Am Yisroel Chai.